So let's have you try the mate really quick, actually.
All right.
Let's have you go with that blue one right there. I don't know if you like bitter, so you're first gonna taste a little bit of bitter. If you don't, you might have to go for the water right away.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I'm not a bitter person.
All right.
Ooh.
Hello, Ola, and welcome everyone to Drinking Mate in the Mitten, the show that brings creative people together with the drink of yerba mate. I am your host, Eze Enriquez, and we are at the beautiful Artist Eze studio share located in Southeast Michigan, a place for creatives, by creatives, and today I have the honor, the pleasure of sitting down next to none other than an amazing Michigan creative and producer of the new Revenge of the Masked film.
Thank you.
Dylan Sides, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing very good.
Good, good, good. So, let's have a little chat today. Let's talk a little bit about the mask. So, how did this project all come together?
This project is pretty much about 14 years in the making. I started basically on working on another film as a makeup effects artist, and that's where I started in the industry. And what we were doing was basically creating masks for Son of the Mask and makeup and prosthetics and whatnot. And my mentor, Ray Heikis, was on crew, and that's where I started my career. And I met a lot of the people involved in the original creation of the first film. And I had joked around for years, that we were going to make a movie because of, the terrible bomb that was Son of the Mask. And so we ended up going back, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago. Me and my friend Kyle, we kept writing scripts saying, oh, you know what, let's do it. Let's actually do it. And it came down to, I think, about 4 different scripts. And then my good friend Karen Klosky ended up passing away last year. And that was kind of the kick in the ass to say, hey, because she was the creator of the original prop. And right before she passed, she sent us one of these, which
That's amazing.
was, this is a Hero A2 copy of The Mask from the original film.
Gotcha.
And basically she said, hey, go ahead and take a mold of it for your film. I have a couple of masks from Son of the Mask, and I have one from the original film, but they're all too delicate to take actual molds of. And so I did, and shortly thereafter she ended up passing away. And so we said, okay, now we have to do it. And so we gathered the money together, me and my wife Christina, and we said, okay, we have probably about 6 months to pull it off. And then we went through the process of finding people to be involved in the project, and that's when I met with Lance Kwas, the director.
The director, yeah.
And I was working with him on a couple other projects at the time, and I'd worked with him a lot in the past. And then I knew I wanted someone who was a creative but dramatic director. I didn't want someone who typically does comedies or that kind of work, because I knew someone that kind of work with this darker material.
Which I was gonna say, your movie takes a different twist to let's say the original one had a little bit of darkness.
Yes.
In there, little tiny bit. Which I'm a huge fan of the original one, so I can't wait to see this new one.
Well, basically, the original concept of The Mask is based on a comic book of the same name. The Mask was a horror comic book that was released in 1989
by Dark Horse. Dark Horse, okay.
And The Mask of the same the same title, was always meant to be a horror film, and it was written to be that until the director was brought aboard, and they kind of reimagined the script and said this could be much bigger if it was available to a broader audience.
Gotcha.
And they were right,
yeah.
Especially after they hired someone like Jim Carrey. And so I love that movie. That was my childhood, and being a part of the sequel was an honor regardless of how it ended. And I really thought, I don't want to do anything to step on the original, because I knew that people would just rip it apart. And I thought, what would be really interesting is to see a concept of a mask with no limits, because the closest thing we got to see of that is Dorian. Dorian in the story from the first Mask is about the closest thing to the Mask from the comic books as we got. And that's the interesting thing about the Mask, is it's not about a villain or really thereof in the comic books. It's putting on the mask and figuring out who you truly are. And in the comic books, it's more of a possessing entity that corrupts you over time. But we wanted to do a story, basically think of it like a man who thinks he's the hero and puts on the mask only to find out that he's actually the villain.
Now, how tough was it to find that main actor to portray that?
Very tough. We went through, I want to say, about 3 months before we figured out who we wanted for the picture. And what we ended up doing was we decided that practically it would actually be easier what if we actually just cast 2 people for one role. So there's a duality to the performance, a serious duality. Alan, the character, is a very timid man who, he himself is not a very confrontational guy. He just gets himself into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And the Mask is Alan, only with his brain, filled with a liter of acid. Basically, all that power, quickly corrupts him. And you could say, yeah, maybe it's the Mask, but by the time you get to the end of the story, we have our villain of the story even telling him, man, you've become a psychopath.
Nice.
And, then the Mask kind of likes it.
Well,
or Alan.
Let me ask you a question. How, what was your hand in, I know you're a producer in the movie, and I know the director usually deals with the actors, but did you have any kind of hand in dealing with his performance? Not helping him a little bit, or shaping it, or guiding him a little bit?
The first step to that was really casting Michael Bugard in the role of the Mask itself. Tim Parrish plays, Alan, and the characters really came from the personalities of the actors themselves. Alan, played by Tim Parrish, he's a very calm, collective person, couldn't hurt a fly. And he's brilliant. I had been working with him on another film, a religious-based film called Footsteps in the Sand, for about a year. And he is the lead in that, and I loved his performance in that film. So that's why he was the first person we casted. And then I had worked with Michael a lot over the last couple of years, and Michael is the exact opposite. He's abrasive, he's very quick to judge, but at the same time he's an amazing human being, but he's kind of scary in a good way for us. And so I had approached him about the role, and he was a big comic book fan, and he knew of the original comic books. And basically, when I got Lance aboard with those two, the development of the characters immediately took off. And I think maybe less than 2 weeks, I was already getting calls from Michael in character with the voice and everything else.
Nice, I'm sure that was kind of creepy.
Oh yeah, and and then once we started working on costume, I think that's when it really came together. Was Michael had gotten the costume and the teeth for the first time, because the teeth alters your facial expressions and your performance. He had to take those things home, much like Jim Carrey did.
Gotcha.
When Jim Carrey first got the teeth, he couldn't talk at all. They're so big and they alter your jaw structure. And we even had to really kind of take the mold of Michael's face while he had his jaw open, because we knew that the prosthetic would have to settle around the teeth. And
now, did you do all the prosthetic stuff yourself, or?
No, Tracy, a brilliant effects artist friend of mine came in and helped me with that, because I can do it, but unfortunately I knew that being a producer and dealing with everything else, there's just no way, because I was already dealing with the props.
Yeah.
So I did all the props for the film. Christina Tomlinson, my wife, she did all the costume design and production design.
Gotcha.
And then me and her worked together to create a kind of a cohesive look to the whole film. And then basically it was up to Tracy to design the character himself, the look. And I told him to not even look at the films. Just look at the comic book and design it from that.
Interesting. Okay.
So it may have come out looking a lot like that character, but a lot of that's just the look of Michael himself, because he was already bald. He has kind of a an outward chin, and so it just accentuated the look of him. And after he got the test of the makeup and the teeth at the same time, I want to say within a week, it was there.
They kind of threw him into the character and made him believe in himself that he was that.
That combined with working with Lance for a couple of weeks, it was seamless. The most real moment for me was day one. Because the day one we shot two of the coolest scenes, which was the beach scene.
Or the bridge scene.
No, we shot the beach first.
Okay.
That was the first at the top of the day, which was the most difficult. Because in one day, it was snowing, then raining, then hailing, and then back to snowing, and then a tornado warning came later that evening.
Nice.
And the whole time we're just
filmmaking at its finest.
in Michigan.
Yeah.
And we're just sitting there waiting in between all the hellish weather to just basically start. So as we're getting everything prepped, half the team was back at my place because we filmed all in kind of one location area. We shot the beach out by Luna Pier, which is the farthest location from everything else. But the rest of the locations for the project was around the Flat Rock area, which is pretty close to where I live. So we just kind of made my house home base, and that's where we filmed a lot of Alan's house scenes too.
Let me ask you another question. How important was it to have distribution already, or the mindset of distribution in place before you guys even filmed this movie?
It was never a thought of actually getting distribution. Like I said, when we started this project, it was a promise, and I knew that there was a ravenous fan base out there that has been waiting since 2004 for a proper film to be released, or anything for that matter. And there's tons of fan films of the mask that have been released out there, but none of them, the closest thing was this grand fan film that really went to lengths of doing the comic book justice. They actually even just had like this foam cut out, like foam sculpted mask character, and I had thought that if I could take something that was kind of the best of both worlds, had the had the stylistic elements of the film mixed with the thematic overtones of the comic book, that you would have something recognizable but go to a darker level. So almost like it could exist within the same, I wouldn't say the same universe, but in the same realm.
Well, and I saw in the parts of the trailer that you're also covering like different time periods in the movie. Or at least one other time period, it seems like.
Not exactly. The Viking stuff, and I know everybody immediately jumps to that, and we just revealed that there will be a Viking short, an entire short film dedicated to the origin of the mask and how it ended up on that beach.
Okay, nice.
And we've been keeping that a secret for months. So that was actually the very last thing we shot, and it is a completely separate story, but it does directly connect into the beginning of the Revenge of the Mask.
Gotcha. Now, I also see in your IMDb that you have a lot of different credits, and you've done cinematography as well. What is where do you get the most enjoyment working in the industry?
As a DP, definitely. Okay. And that's what actually made me not want to do special effects anymore. I spent more time engaged what was happening behind the scenes with the cameras and whatnot than I was actually doing my job. And as much as I enjoy being a producer or doing, construction work or, effects, there's just nothing more fulfilling than seeing a world come to life, behind a lens. I don't know what it is. It's addictive.
Lights and shadows, man. That's when you can start studying those shadows and just appreciating shadows more than anything else. That's I think where
it's the same reason why I love magic or the practice of it, is because that's exactly what film is. It's an old school magic trick. That's what it started out as. Film was a magic trick that was invented for the sole purpose of entertaining people.
Now, did you go to film school?
No.
Okay, so what's your recommendation to a young person right now trying to figure out between, do I spend this money, get myself a DSLR camera or a rig and kind of try to do it myself, or do I go to film school?
Actually, I would say neither. The first thing, if anybody ever wants to start joining the world of film, is go out to Craigslist or anywhere that's looking for help and just join a movie set. Join a movie set as a PA, low level, anything you can get, because the best way to learn how to work in film is to actually work in film. Granted, you won't be making any money anytime soon, but it's the best way because film changes constantly. Every time I walk onto a new set, there's a new set of rules, and it's the only way to really keep up with what's actually happening out there. Now, that's not to say that film school isn't going to help, especially if you're absolutely certain of what you want to do. But you might arrive to a set, like I did, and discover that what you are seeking isn't exactly what you want to do, and that something else to you is just far more enticing, and it would be the fastest way to learn that rather than spend hundreds of thousands of dollars at a college or a film school.
Plus, you don't know if you might love it or not until you actually try to go do it. Because, for example, for myself, I've never had the honor yet of filming or directing a movie. And of course, we always have the mindset, I think a lot of directors, even though I'm doing commercials here and there, we think, oh, one day I want to film a movie, one day I want to film a movie. But I might hate it. To be honest with you, I might hate it. I don't know yet until I try it.
Yeah.
I have to go through the whole process of sitting there filming for 3 months or 4 months, with the same crew over and over.
And filming a movie is a very daunting, ridiculous process that just doesn't exist in any other form of any other workforce. For instance, the hardest day we had on set, and it was the most ridiculous day, we had this unfortunate time because I was quite ill. I had a problem in my right arm that I had to go take care of, and so I had to leave set, and everyone else was trying to work out and finish a very important scene that I can't talk about because it will ruin the movie. But it was a very integral scene, and we're shooting at this warehouse, and basically I had to leave, and they didn't finish for almost 11 hours between the time that I left, which means that it was a 14-hour day. And in those 14 hours, everyone was just ready to kill everyone. But, by the next day, the site was wiped clean and everybody was fine. But, it's very exhausting. It's a very daunting process that you would never expect to wear out certain parts of your psyche that you didn't know you had. By the end of it, you're angry and you just want to get through it. But at the same time, you have to be creative and keep up with what's happening around you constantly.
So how do you deal psychologically with that negativity in the art? Because I imagine a lot of people on the outside imagine that we're lucky to get to do what we do. We enjoy so much. Our lives are perfect. We never have any problems. So how do you deal with the actual negativity that lives there, all the bad stuff?
Do your best to put yourself in everyone else's shoes. Because everyone there is there to do a very specific job. Whether you're Istvan, the DP of the project, who has a very specific set of problems to deal with. He's there for the sole purpose of making sure that the project looks its best. And he, if he's doing his job correctly, which Istvan does excellently, he'll do anything to make sure that happens. And Istvan, being old school, will sit there and just say, hey, this looks like crap, this looks like kindergarten, in those exact words.
Yeah.
And he does not hold back. And so that can create, aggravation between me and Istvan, or even Istvan and Lance, which those two work together very well. But then, when you're being very picky about what happens on set or what happens on the screen, as a producer, my job is to make sure that everything happens, or happens at all, and then moves forward. And, Istvan and Lance's goal is to make sure that everything's perfect, but sometimes you have to nudge people to get things moving, because then when you leave and then you have a 14-hour day, that means that things didn't move very well. So basically, it all comes down to, when I'm talking to them on set, is to put myself in their shoes, and that's really what you have to do, because you know what their jobs are, you know what they're there for, and to just say, like, these two are taking too long, they need to hurry the hell up. It's like, no, you need to say, okay, I know what these two are doing, and I know what they want to do. What can I do to help them move forward? Or what kind of compromise can we come to make sure that we can get the image and still make our day?
And that's filmmaking, is doing everything with a team.
Yes.
A lot of
it
people,
is a collaborative process.
Yeah. There's people that made the mistake, and again, I'll point at myself, because I love pointing at my own self mistakes, which I made earlier on, thinking that I could do it all by myself. I could film everything by myself. I don't need no help, So I wasn't worried about having people.
Dead by the end.
No. And not only dead, but the stuff that was coming out was not of any high quality, because I just didn't. Not only did I not have people to help me out around me, I didn't have people to tell me, maybe you shouldn't be filming it that way. Maybe let's try something else. That's where I learned when I started working with clients is, at the beginning, I didn't like their recommendations. Can you change this? Can you change that? And then I started noticing the projects getting a little better. Even though it was going against my original idea that I had in my head, it was somebody else's. Can you change this? I don't really want to do it. Fine, let me do it. They're probably going to screw up the project. And I did it, and all of a sudden the edit looks way better.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's working with that kind of team environment,
Yep. And it was just also figuring out very clearly what everybody is there to do. Basically, I handled the overall vision of the project. Lance, because I also wrote it, and Athena Lebes is, oh God, I hope it's her last name. Rachel slap me. She, did the edits with me. Kyle, he handled the overall arcing characters. Basically figuring out how they work together or against each other, and. So, that all came down with Lance's creativity and his input, too. So, when you kind of figure out that dynamic and then you find the team to kind of work around those issues, that's when you know that a film's going to move very smoothly. And I would say that was really the hardest day we had on the whole schedule. The day that we really, really came together crazy well, of course, was the last day of production. And that's when we did the Viking scene, and we did that after a 2 or 3 week break.
Okay.
And that was on purpose, because the idea that we had was we shot at the same beach that we shot the chest opening sequence that you saw in the trailer, and we came back when we knew that foliage would be grown out, and we knew by the time we come back that it would start warming up. And when we came back, the beach was completely different. It looked like a completely different beach. We just spent about a week cleaning it up, cleaned up all the garbage that was on it that we just left, purposely the way it was when we found it the first time. It was an abandoned beach. No one had been on it, just people trashing it and stuff. And we kind of wanted it to look dead and deserted. Like the mask being there had affected the area around it. So we knew that when things were going backwards, this place had to look beautiful, lush, and perfect. And so when you see the Viking sequence, it is the same place, same Michigan environment, but it doesn't look like it at all. And a lot of that was just, nature taking it back, and my effects crew and Christina dressing the whole environment. We added some of our own stuff and rocks and twigs and whatnot, but it's almost impossible to tell what is and what isn't us. And then there was some CG work from some of the wider shots.
Okay.
That basically we used to remove some elements and add some stuff, but other than that, it was completely natural environment.
Now, the writing process for the screenplay, when you weren't the only writer in it.
No.
How did that process work, having to work with somebody else?
Well,
is it easier working by yourself than working with somebody else? Or?
Oh, no, I love working with Kyle. I've been working with Kyle as a partner screenwriter for, 15 years.
Wow, okay.
And
it's like a marriage. So you're married to your wife, and then you have your other marriage.
No, he will tell you, we fight like an old married couple. But no, we have a great dynamic. Is that I'm good at setting up a story, and he's good at writing characters. So
Perfect.
yeah. So basically, the story is by me, and it's really kind of just then the characters' motivations and who they are. Because Kyle's also a brilliant actor, and he appears in the film as Red, the dude with the beard.
Okay.
So he's great with coming up with character motivation and who they are as a person. So that comes from his world of acting.
Gotcha.
And then after we finished up with the script, and then Lance was brought on board, he cleaned up the script with Athena. So she cleaned up some of the dialogue and some of the situations. And then once we came to a final on it, after like 3 or 4 versions, it didn't take very long until we figured out what we wanted to do with it. Because we knew from the beginning that we wanted it to be a very simple revenge story, and we didn't want the story to distract from the real story, which was basically the underarching story, which is really about Alan himself. Because as I said, this is a story of a man who thinks he's the hero, but he's actually the villain.
Okay.
And we really wanted that to be the most present element of the story.
Now, you said it took about 3 months to find him as an actor, the main actor.
Yeah.
Now, you've done a lot of casting process before, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's one advice that you can give to people walking into a casting room? Should you go in there full on as a character, or should you go in there as yourself, introduce yourself, knowing that you are going to be working with these people for 3 months,
It all comes down to what the script is. When you're working on a more professional project, they give you sides. But sometimes you can come in with a complete cold read and have no idea what the character is. And that means they're usually looking for a very specific look, and they are keeping the script very under wraps. But if you're able to get a hold of the script ahead of time, just do your research, figure out, give the character motivations, and just make it your own.
Which sometimes, and that's funny, because sometimes I feel like there is a right person for the role, period. Yeah. It doesn't matter if they're a worse actor than the other guy that walked in the room. If they look like the role, they're most likely to get the part than the guy who spent years going to acting school. And
see, for me, I'm always looking for who embodies the role the most. Like when Mike had done his process of basically his auditions with Lance, I told him that this is a character that is basically the embodiment of human insanity, and just find that level of because it's like layers, because he basically had to remember what Tim is going to do with his performance, and then kind of push that aside and have it in the back of the character's mind, but at the same time develop his own separate character.
Okay.
So that's very difficult for an actor to do, is to basically think, okay, I not only have to remember what this guy's doing and then use a piece of that, but then I also have to be this completely other guy. And then I can't say exactly how, but Tim had to do something very similar towards the very end. He kind of had to embody Michael's performance a little bit.
Gotcha.
After the mask comes off.
That means go see the movie. That's important. Go see the movie. So let me ask you another quick question. When you were younger, a lot of us have movies that inspire us. I hate the one question of what's your favorite movie? Because there's not one favorite movie. It's like, oh my God, that's impossible to just pick one.
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future. Okay, the original one.
It's a perfect trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as a whole, it's a perfect trilogy. It ends. It doesn't leave it open for another sequel or anything else.
You could bring something back right now, like
that one. They genuinely can't, because the guy who created the story owns the rights, and they have it locked with Steven Spielberg.
Okay.
So essentially, it's never going to come out. There's never going to be another Back to the Future, which is a good thing, though.
Gotcha.
Because it's not to say that every movie ever doesn't need to be redone or whatever to bring it to a new generation who wouldn't watch something just because it looks dated. Mm-hmm. Which is cool. But Back to the Future is so, the situation around it isn't exactly modern, but at the same time, the characters themselves feel so real, and they're so fleshed out, and the situation, the car, everything's just so cool. And it's something that I think even people today, the fact that it's still celebrated, every October Well, no, it's October 21st.
Okay.
Is now considered Back to the Future Day.
Nice.
And October 21st, 2015.
I think the same problem with owning the license happened with God, what's that superhero? The one in a purple costume. The one with yes,
Yeah.
that one. Yeah, I think somebody it's like split. The rights are split between two groups, and they won't come together to actually make a new one. Or
yeah, that, and also it's just not a very good superhero.
It's not. No, it's not. No, but I was thinking right away. Okay, so that's one of the movies that kind of inspire you, that trilogy.
Back to the Future. I love my horror films, and I love a story with I love that one for many reasons, but the stories that I like the most are ones with real villains, ones that when you have an antagonist that actually believes what they're doing is right, and are more three-dimensional, it makes it more not just entertaining to watch, but more fulfilling, because when you have a character who thinks they're doing the right thing, even being so profoundly immoral, it makes it more compelling.
Gotcha. Another question: how important, as a filmmaker, especially nowadays, where there's so much stuff out in the market, how important is it, if you're going to come up with a screenplay and you're going to try to shoot it yourself, to come up with a niche kind of film, or to at least try to put your film into a niche market? Is that a smarter idea nowadays?
Unfortunately, yes. I know of a ton of films out there that really deserve to be seen, that are independent, that are grand or beautiful and have an amazing story. But these days, people just want to see something either shocking or completely different, or they want to see something rebooted. And I would say that it's become a very niche market, but at the same time, there's always that chance that something could become an original hit considered these days. But it's a very hard thing to describe. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish with the film. Like, when we set out to make Revenge, we never, it was never meant to be something that was more than what it was. Before, when we got Dark Horse, on our back, or basically everybody else involved, it was always just supposed to be a fan film. And then it just became something more, throughout the production process. And when we released the trailer, I was never expecting anything more than like maybe 100, 200,000 views.
Yeah. No, it got way more than that. It went
a little bit more. Yeah. And so we, once that happened, though, I was like, okay, it confirmed everything I already knew about the series, and that, it's there. A lot of other little things happened that was just excellent. Like the first being that Dark Horse is now re-releasing the Mass comic book.
Nice.
That you can buy an entire compendium of all the comic books together.
Nice.
And they haven't done that for like 15 years.
Okay.
And that was solely because of the trailer.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. And then, my hopes and dreams for this is that even if we're not involved, is that the Mask will come back in some way, shape, or form. And that's exactly what happened with Power Rangers.
Yeah.
A fan film for Power Rangers was created and released as a gritty fake reboot. And the idea was making fun of the fact that all these popular kids movies were being taken and then rebooted as gritty films, like Transformers and whatnot, or Battleship.
Yeah.
And
I got a script for Speed Racer that's extremely dark, that takes place like 40 years later. That I'm like, I don't know if anybody would ever like this one because it's dark. And a Speed Racer, like, and he's old.
They made it, and they actually had a couple famous people in it. It was James Vanderbeek and the chick from Battlestar Galactica. And, long story short, 6 months later, because of the immense success of this short film, basically it greenlit another Power Rangers movie. And so my hopes and dreams are that happens.
Which it goes into, this is a business, a show business, not not show I like it, it's show business. And a lot of decisions, I think, are made from Hollywood or from the top saying, hey, let's see
how much interest.
Yeah, let's see how much interest, how many viewers will go after this, you know. Just because it wouldn't make sense. I know a lot of people just want to see random stuff, but it just doesn't make sense if the money's not there.
Exactly.
Like, the money has to be there. I think in the future, you know, I wasn't sure if that was me or you.
That's me.
I wasn't sure in the future, you know, I'm looking at the aspect that the industry will expand a little bit towards the Hispanic arts. Just because, again, not only is it a lot easier nowadays to put out a film and have it shown in Netflix in Argentina and Brazil and everywhere else, you know, all these Latin countries.
Yeah.
You know, but now it just makes a lot of sense for companies to say, hey, look, we can make a film all in English, or we can make it in English with maybe one of the main characters also speaking Spanish here and there, and then boom, they release that all over South America.
Have it dubbed in Spanish.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a whole process by itself, right?
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Rise is not, but that's also because there's very, very little dialogue in it. But Revenge, we are going to have it dubbed.
Got it.
So probably Spanish and I think French.
Okay.
It depends, because we've been looking at what territories, you know, the trailer's been getting watched.
And it's usually one company that does all that kind of.
Yep.
You sign it to one company and they do different
It's
languages.
actually a company through YouTube. That's going to be
Interesting. Okay, that I did not even know that it existed through YouTube.
Oh yeah, they do dubbing.
Okay.
And they also have this translation matrix that you could use to do like you know, the little words in the bottom and whatnot.
Gotcha.
So it's actually fascinating, the process they go through with everything. And then once your film reaches a certain level, they pretty much almost all but offer for that to happen.
Interesting.
So it just makes it easier for everyone else to watch.
Gotcha. Okay, so perfect. I think that is all, man. Those are all the questions I got.
All right.
Sir, thank you so much. I appreciate it for you coming by, having a
problem.
little chat with us, you know, talking about your film. We wish you the best, or I should say I wish you the best so I don't look all crazy like there's another me over here.
Yeah.
So I wish you the best, and I cannot wait to see it. Honestly,
you.
I can't wait to see it.
You want to see the Rise of the Mask?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. We'll have to cut that so nobody...